Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. John Wick 3 is out in theaters and Keanu Reeves has solidified his place as the ultimate assassin of our generation, and more importantly, solidified a place in our hearts. And you have to really respect the man for all of the hard work and training he put himself through to get to the level where he was at in the film. We even got a CQC expert who specializes in training SWAT team members and special forces to look at the film, and according to him, Keanu Reeves definitely checks out.
I think if I was able to take him to some of our SWAT training classes and specialty classes, I think he'd hang with the best of them.
But back when Keanu was still stuck in the Matrix, another actor who is famous for getting engrossed into roles, training like a madman and doing all of his stunts, graced the screen in a masterpiece film which showed us what it was like to be a contract killer. The film was Collateral, and the man is Tom Cruise, playing a character named Vincent. Although this movie is light on action when compared to John Wick, Collateral was one of the first movies to show proper tactical shooting like what we see in John Wick. Today I want to take a look at these two characters, analyze their skill sets, where their mind is, what their training is like, and also what their strengths and weaknesses are. Then at the end of the video, you the viewers get to vote in a poll in the top right corner on which assassin you think is better. First, a little background. For John Wick, we're going to be focusing on just the first two movies, because we don't really have footage for the third movie yet, and if there's no video evidence, there's no way to tell if these events actually happened in real life. Anyway, John Wick, also known as Baba Yaga, aka the Boogeyman, is a former contract killer who worked primarily for the Tarasov mob. Cold world, he lives in this fantastical world with charismatic crime lords and extremely deadly assassins. But it's clear he's the best at his job, and his name is surrounded by fear and respect. After a spoiled son of a Russian mob boss breaks into Wick's house and kills his puppy and steals his car, Wick comes out of retirement and starts a mission of revenge that snowballs quickly out of control. Whereas John Wick is strictly an action film, Collateral is more of a thriller. The action scenes are limited, and perhaps that makes the movie a little more realistic. I mean, you can only kill so many people in real life and not get shot yourself. The film takes place in 2004. Tom Cruise was still sane back then, and Jamie Foxx wasn't always overacting. Cell phones only had brick and snake on them, and surveillance was nowhere near as complicated as it is today, so in a way it was easier to get away with crime and murder. The movie takes place in the grim, sprawling city of Los Angeles over the course of one night. Vincent, played by Tom Cruise, is visiting town so that he can make 5 meetings for a big real estate deal he's trying to pull off. He manages to step into a cab of an individual named Max. Max might be like someone you know. He's way too intelligent for the job he's currently in, but he's far too afraid to step out of his comfort zone. But Vincent recognizes his potential and offers him a week's pay to drive him around for the night. Max takes the money and is horrified to find that Vincent's 5 real estate deals are actually contract hits. The cab driver and the hitman are forced to spend the rest of the night together in a very forced relationship. John Wick is 6'1", 175 pounds, and 50 years old. He's mostly lean meat and very little fat. His muscles are for combat and not for show. He also seems to have lanky man strength. You know those individuals who look very thin and weak, but when you actually start grappling with them, they're incredibly strong and it's a pain in the ass to fight them. Whip's body type helps give him increased reach for striking and also leverage for grappling. John Wick is also incredibly physically and mentally tough. He's survived multiple gunshots. He also gets hit by a car in the first movie and gets up from it. In Chapter 2, things get a little bit more out of control. He's hit by a car 3 times. He's close enough to a high explosive grenade round that he's thrown into the air and also somehow survives. Also in Chapter 2, he takes multiple gunshots to the body while just wearing a thin, bullet-resistant vest with very little padding. He basically shrugs it off like they were bee stings. Pretty sure you get internal bleeding from that, but hey, by Chapter 2, John Wick is basically Terminator. Vincent is 5'7", 170 pounds, and younger at 42 years old. He's a bit stockier than Keanu, and more importantly, he's got angry little man strength, which is just as terrifying as lanky man strength, especially when they get inside and start pummeling your body. Vincent has excellent stamina, and he's also quite tough. He's able to survive 1 car accident, although unlike Keanu, he is inside the car. John Wick has very limited dialogue, and it kind of makes sense for the character. He's all about efficiency, precision, and control. He rarely loses his cool, and he kills like a machine. We're kind of led in the movie to think that he's a good guy, because occasionally he'll stick a knife in a person's artery and shoot someone in the kneecaps and give them a choice not to die. But no matter how many times he looks at his wife's picture or pets his puppies, John Wick's kill count is still ridiculous and probably like a crime against humanity or something. The fact that he can kill so many people, even if they are scumbags, and be completely emotionless and detached, and then show compassion is an extremely terrifying thing. He has empathy, but he's able to compartmentalize his emotions in ways very few of us can. This type of mental discipline is only seen in very old and wise people, mostly people who have gone through a lot of suffering, like war veterans, maybe Holocaust survivors, and so on. Which makes sense because John Wick is not a character being played by Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is being played by John Wick, who is an immortal vampire who just needs a hug. No, but seriously, I love dogs, and I would never pet John Wick's dog because I'd be afraid the dog might die, and then he would hunt me down, kill me, and then chase me into hell and kill me again. Vincent is clearly a very intelligent, insightful individual. He's very instinctive and able to learn a lot about an individual upon just meeting them. He's probably developed this skill while growing up because he is clearly a sociopath, and he's used his ability to look at other people to help him blend in with the rest of society. It also makes him a great assassin. He's great at blending in and has no remorse when he needs to kill someone. An avid jazz fan even sits down and has a drink with one of his targets and asks him about the time he played with Miles Davis, before double tapping him in the head. His love for jazz and his occasional rants about the social and economic problems in Los Angeles, along with his very fine, detailed knowledge of Los Angeles taxi company insurance policies, shows that he's a very informed individual who loves gathering information. He uses that knowledge to rationalize his killing of other people as well. But this type of rationalization is not for himself. He's completely at ease with what he does. It's really for Max. As a matter of fact, Max is the only individual Vincent doesn't seem to want to kill. He actually has a lot of reasons to kill Max because Max constantly is messing with his plan to kill all of these targets. Vincent also seems to go out of his way to help the cab driver, whether it's scaring his corrupt boss or taking him to see his ailing mother in between kills. Although maybe that's just so that he can find out where his mother is and then use her for leverage against Max later on. Vincent also really wants to push Max to his potential and get him out of his terrible job and start that luxury limo company he's been planning. Or calling that woman who earlier left him a business card. I don't think Vincent really does this out of genuine care. Maybe Vincent sees Max as a project, something amusing to play with. Or maybe Vincent just yearns for a connection with other people, and Max is the closest thing you can get. As we mentioned before, we took a CQC expert who broke down the tactics and movement of John Wick in the first John Wick film. Judging from the tattoos on the body of John Wick, he was formerly a Marine. Upon leaving the service, he most likely received some extra training in CQC and martial arts. As our expert mentioned time and time again, his body position and weapon platform was usually spot on, giving him this ability to properly acquire targets quickly. His background in martial arts and weapon grip meant that he did a good job in close quarter combat, especially when it came to gun retention. John Wick clearly has a lot of experience and probably drills a lot of his moves time and time again because, let's be honest, some of these jiu-jitsu throws he pulls off are pretty crazy without any practice. John Wick clearly also has a lot of experience. There's no hesitation when he moves in battle, and he's clearly drilled a lot of these moves several times. This is especially apparent with the variety of very complicated and creative jiu-jitsu takedowns he employs in close quarters. John Wick is also pretty well versed in tactical driving. Mustangs, as beautiful as they are not easy to swing around a corner, especially when you have only one hand on the wheel and the other one out the window firing a gun. He also did an excellent job training his dog. Although most likely John Wick did not need to train the dog, it just naturally respected him. Now, Vincent is alive during a different time from John Wick. One of the results of more than a decade of war in the Middle East is tons of very skilled and talented soldiers who are approaching middle age and ready to serve in the private sector and also train people how to fight. Since the movie takes place in early 2000 and Vincent is almost 40, he most likely did not have the same type of training that John Wick did. The type of training that John Wick had probably would have been harder for civilians to get, and it probably would have even been rare for police departments to get this. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't until the 90s that police officers across the United States started adopting military-style rifles as a part of their arsenal. This was after the infamous North Hollywood shootout in which the police were unable to stop two gunmen armed with assault rifles and body armor. Most police forces in the nation were only equipped with pistols, service revolvers, and shotguns. So it's impressive that Vincent seems to be so well versed with using a handgun. He also shows good CQC techniques in this one scene. Instead of killing his dog, two muggers take Vincent's briefcase and face equally deadly consequences. Vincent starts with a high block, knocks a pistol out of his face, and fires his pistol immediately from the hip, showing good retention and speed. The coroner later examines the bodies and identifies his shots' close groupings as a sign of a true professional. Now, John Wick shoots more people before breakfast than Vincent does his entire business trip. But when we do see Vincent shoot, he's clearly no amateur. He shows off more of his close quarter skills in the nightclub. He has really good tactical awareness and isn't overwhelmed by his surroundings. Although he's not as well choreographed as Wick, he's just as quick and efficient at dispatching his enemies. In just the first two John Wick movies, the assassin kills enough individuals to put him on Vasily Zaychev's level. And that's only after he comes out of retirement. John Wick is naturally skilled, yes. He's superbly trained, yes. But most importantly, he has more experience in CQC than almost any human alive at this point. And you can tell just how well practiced his movements are. The lack of hesitation and pause between kills and executions shows us a man who's extremely comfortable in combat. Everything is almost second nature. When he's in the middle of a fight, he's like a whirlwind of destruction. There's a beautiful rhythm to it all. And it's not just luck, although he is pretty lucky. Vincent uses his brain to avoid confrontation as much as possible. When he loses his data files, he needs to ask his client Felix for another copy. Vincent sends in Max to pose as him, limiting his exposure. Generally speaking, Vincent tries to make sure that not even his employers know exactly what he looks like. Being anonymous really helps in his line of work. As a matter of fact, on his entire night of killing, the only thing that all the hits can be traced back to is Max's cat. And for a while, the LAPD thinks Max is the killer. John Wick is really good at what he does, which also means he kills far too many people. Sure, his revenge mission was satisfying, but it was ill-advised. He had already retired, had a pretty comfortable life, but his revenge mission slowly turned into a war with almost the entire criminal underground. A man based on principle like John Wick is sometimes unable to be flexible and rational, which always means extra work and hardship. Although Vincent doesn't kill nearly as many people as John Wick does, he's still fighting at a pretty high level. What does separate him from John Wick is the fact that Vincent fights with a bit more emotion than Keanu does. This is why occasionally Vincent will pop a few rounds into a corpse or visually seem upset during a battle. While this is natural for most people in stressful situations like being in a gunfight, it is a weakness and probably due to either a lack of discipline or experience. When people get emotional, their IQ generally drops several points and they aren't able to think clearly. This can be deadly in CQC battles where margins for error are basically non-existent. So there you have it, guys. Two very interesting assassins who kind of have a different style. Let me know in the poll up there which one you think did better, and also let me know in the comment section below why you chose who you chose. I'm interested to hear. Anyway, guys, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on more awesome content from Generation Films. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie, and you are the protagonist.